AMD's 7900 XT and XTX are their latest offerings for the high-end GPU market. The 7900 XT competes directly with the 4080, with the XTX sandwiched somewhere between the 4080 and 4090 in terms of relative performance. And today we're going to test if you like competitive shooters, whether or not this is the new GPU that you need to get the FPS that you want. Now that's not to say this GPU is without controversy. If you watched my last tech update video, you would see that 11% of the XTX models are experiencing failures, at least for the reference model, due to their vapor chamber. This is one of those GPUs, and I'm going to go over whether or not I drew the short straw with you guys, but let me go over how I kind of generated this list of games to test. So cross-referencing Steam survey with basically the most watched games on Twitch, I came up with what I think is a fairly comprehensive list of the most played competitive shooters out right now. Now, I did omit some of the games, such as Overwatch, CSGO, Rainbow Six Siege, and Destiny, as Destiny doesn't really strike me as a competitive shooter, and the rest of them are so well optimized, you do not need this level of GPU to get high FPS in those games. That left me with a list of 6 games that have basically either had recent updates that have made them more demanding as far as the hardware, or just aren't greatly optimized and require a lot of punch if you want to get those higher FPS numbers. So that left us with Call of Duty, TARKOV, Apex Legends, FORTNITE, Valorant, and Rust. And yes, I understand, I don't consider Rust a competitive shooter, but apparently Steam and Twitch do. But to me, Rust is as much of a competitive shooter as a cat flying a hang glider is a fighter pilot. Now, really quick, before I go any further, let me remind you about this month's giveaway.
Need a mouse this new year? I've got you covered. I'm giving away the SteelSeries Aerox 3 wireless gaming mouse, and you can learn how to enter it down in the video description below.
Alright guys, so testing methodology as always will be listed down below. I did test in 4K, 1440p, and 1080p. And all these tests were done at maximum settings possible. I mean, I took every slider and pushed it as far right as it would go. And you might be asking yourself, why do that? Because these are competitive shooters. You are going to optimize these to get the most FPS possible. Well, that's exactly why. This is a hardware test. I wanted to see what the baseline performance is, assuming we had all of the settings completely maxed out, even the ones that are dumb if you're playing a competitive shooter. So what that means is that this is a worst case scenario, so when you get this GPU, if you do, you're going to have an even better experience by simply optimizing your settings. Well, I've chit-chatted enough, let's get into these benchmarks and then let's go over the results. So the 7900 XTX is no slouch. Starting off with Apex Legends, we were able to see a pretty dramatic increase in FPS from 4K to 1440p to 1080p, easily hitting the 200 for you guys who have those high refresh rate monitors, and 1440p is still, in my opinion, the sweet spot. With Call of Duty, we were hitting at 4K almost 90 FPS, which is fairly impressive as my 4090 really only pushes about 10 to 20 FPS more on average. At 1440p, we were able to hit 131, and at 1080p, we were able to hit a solid 161 frames per second, again at ultra maxed out settings. Now, FORNITE is a perfect illustration of why even a game like this can absolutely tax a system. As of the new Unreal update, it is a very demanding title if you turn every single setting up to max. At 4K, we were averaging only 71 frames per second. At 1440p, 101, and at 1080p, 117. Now again, nobody really cares about Fortnite's graphical fidelity, so obviously you would optimize this game, but just as a baseline, understand that it's more demanding than you think. Now, Rust didn't have that much variance in FPS, but it should be noted that no matter what frames you're playing at, they were pretty steady. 4K, we saw about an 84 average FPS, 1440p was 101, and at 1080p, we saw 117. So no matter what resolution you play at, you're going to be within about 20 to 30 frames of each other, depending on your preference. Now, TARKOV, again, is another unoptimized title even all these years later. At 4K, we were only seeing about 71 FPS. At 1440p, we got a respectable 121, and at 1080p, about 135. So a difference, but not dramatic. Again, I think 1440p is a pretty good sweet spot for most people. And then topping things off with Valorant, again, this GPU is going to be overkill, but 4K was 221 FPS, 1440p was 273, 1080p was 341. So if you're looking for a GPU that can push those high-end gaming monitors and as much competitive FPS as you can, this one will definitely fit the bill, especially for a game that is now as well optimized as Valorant is. So in terms of overall performance, again, this GPU is incredibly powerful, but there's one other feature that obviously NVIDIA has, DLSS, which can be a game changer, and for an AMD, that's FSR. So I decided in the games that support it to run some tests as well to see if it would make a dramatic difference, and as typical, it can be a game changer. With Call of Duty, we saw a dramatic improvement at 4K, nearly 80 frames more than FSR turned off. At 1440p, 191, and at 1080p, 215 frames per second, a blistering speed which obviously not even many monitors are going to be able to hit at 1080p. TARKOV saw some respectable games at 4K, basically jumping about 50 frames. At 1440p and 1080p, it didn't really have much impact, so again, this is going to have the biggest impact at higher resolutions, but still impressive overall. Now, Fortnite doesn't really have FSR, but it does have TSR, which is based off upscaling. At 4K, again, we saw about a 20 frame uplift at 1440p and 1080p. Not as dramatic, again, about 20 frames respectively between the two resolutions, which again is an improvement, but it's not going to be dramatic. So my takeaway is that this GPU is absolutely capable of hitting higher FPS in competitive games. This is a worst case scenario. You're going to get much better frames than I did by simply optimizing the game, turning things off like shadow, lighting, ambient occlusion, things that don't help you actually play the game better and are pure eye candy, but are essentially going to, hamstring your GPU's frames. But there's a big freaking elephant in the room, and that is the junction temperatures, because remember, this is a reference model. Now, I was happy initially as my temperatures on the GPU never broke 71 degrees Celsius, even under full load, which is respectable, and my junction temperature hit about 88, which again, high, but nothing unmanageable, and I thought that I had won the golden lottery, and I did not have a bad XTX reference model. And remember that because I was running recording software using AMD, there's about a 5% deficit that you're going to take in overall FPS. When I enabled recording along with some other software that was on, I quickly hit the junction temperature max, meaning yes, this has a bad vapor chamber, and so I'm going to have to get a full refund. Now, while that's a little bit sad that I'm going to have to basically wait and get an add-in board partner card, my point of this video is, would I recommend this GPU? Absolutely. I don't recommend buying a reference model. There's just too much risk in getting a vapor chamber basically defect right now. But if you can get an add-in board partner card for $1,000, this competes directly with the 4080 or beats it depending on the game that you're playing. It comes in at a $200 less price premium. It's an incredibly competitive card. I don't really have anything bad to say about it except for obviously the major defect, which again, do not buy the reference model, wait and buy an add-in board partner card, and if you can get it at a good price, that's when it makes sense. But hey, I'm gonna be setting this back and getting my money back since again I got one of the defective ones. But I enjoyed making this video. If you enjoyed it as well, leave me a thumbs up. If you thought it was terrible, leave me a thumbs down. Remember to get subscribed and hit that bell icon so you know when these videos drop next. That giveaway is going to be going on for another like 11-10 days, so make sure to enter it if you haven't already. More giveaways to come in the future and more content. As always, I will see every single one of you next time here on Geared Inc.